Welcome, everyone, to I'm going to say, a pretty interesting episode of Soccer Over There. I want to thank everyone first, before I go into anything else, for letting me bring on my son for the hot drop. Jackie Fresh will not be joining us this evening. He has homework. Everyone's back in school, so he will not be joining us this evening. But I want to say that the feedback that I've been getting on Twitter has been outstanding. He loves it. He told me immediately after we did the show, before we even listened to it, that it felt like a Christmas present to him, that he got to sit here and talk with this old man about soccer and some fun, crazy stuff. And he enjoyed every minute of it. And part of this is actually finding someone to post such content. And the person who I also have to thank, Mr. Jason Longshore. Jason, thank you so much for posting that and continuing to have Soccer Over There be on the SDH network.
You guys are a big part of the SDH network, so anytime Jackie Fresh has things to say, the mic is his.
Well, thank you very much, sir. We're going to go ahead and get right into it because there's so much going on. We're going to start off with, it's official, it's done. This window, I feel like, is the window of worst kept secrets. We'll start off with Tata Martino going to El Tri. And the big question, Jason, to cheer or not to cheer for Tata Martino's Mexican side when they come to Mercedes-Benz. What are your thoughts on to cheer or not to cheer?
See, for me, I've never been in the boat of, I will never pull for Mexico, ever. And I was not on the boat of, Landon Donovan, how could you do such a thing with his advertising campaign over the summer and all that stuff. But I have a very different background to it. And the reason why I'm not like that is I coached a team with Soccer in the Streets that was 90% Mexican, maybe give or take, maybe 85, maybe 95, somewhere in that ballpark. As the years went on, but it was predominantly a team of young Mexican boys who lived in College Park and East Point, and we talked soccer all the time, before training, after training, on the weekends, before games, after games, and I've followed Mexico, and I've been to Mexico games with these guys, and I don't have the animosity that others do. Yes, that's the U.S. men's national team's big rival, but when Tata Martino and Mexico, let's take Tata out of it for a second. When Mexico is playing anyone other than the United States, and for me, Argentina, I'm fine with pulling for Mexico. I don't have a problem with it. So now that Tata Martino is there, yeah, it makes it even easier for me. I want Tata to do well after what he did here in Atlanta, so I'm good with it. That game here is not going to be against the U.S. men's national team. Once everything gets announced, and if it all goes down as we expect, then yes, Mexico will be playing at Mercedes-Benz Stadium, and I think you're going to have a number of fans who are also Atlanta United fans who will give Tata Martino a very warm reception.
I'm of the mindset that man brought a title to the city of Atlanta. I have no problems going absolutely hog wild for the Mexican national team when they come to Mercedes-Benz, because any team that man leads, I'm going to be, well, let me back up. Just about any team that he walks in here with, I'm going to be clapping and cheering for, because he brought something I didn't think I would see in my lifetime. I know a lot of people who live in Atlanta who suffered through 28-3 understand that the likelihood of a championship coming here was slim to none. So I will be clapping and cheering and wearing my Five Stripes kit when Tata Martino rolls into Mercedes-Benz. And for the record, this feels like a Maradona-Napoli moment from World Cup 90, where if you listen to some of the Italian national team players from that game, they say that had the game been played anywhere else, they would have had a better result. But because they played in Napoli and the crowd was split for Maradona and Argentina versus Italy, it made a difference. So I have no problems. Should that U.S. men's national team game versus Mexico happen at Mercedes-Benz, I think you may see a similar result. So it's just something to keep in mind. But he's taking Rodolfo Palladini, he's taking Jorge Thieler, he's taking Damian Silvero. And if you're not familiar with Rodolfo or Damian, let me just give you a little bit of background here. Last year, I did a Player for a Day charity event up at the Atlanta United training facility, where you drop some cash, you show up, they have a personalized jersey waiting on you, and you get training film session. I know you pretty much get like a watered down day of an Atlanta United player. And Rodolfo ran the training program. And to give you an idea of what Rodolfo brings, he took a bunch of schlubs, and I'm telling you, it is. If you were there, I'm sorry, but we were all schlubs. You had a couple of people who played collegiately, a couple of people who played recreationally, and then one or two people who had never played a day in their life. Like one person showed up wearing like tackle football cleats, like offensive lineman style tackle football cleats. And he started off, broke us into separate groups, and said, okay, we're going to throw the ball first. And so you get used to the movement. And then once you do that, then we'll move to our feet. Then we moved to our feet. And then he moved us to the two separate sides playing in concert. And I'm telling you that within 2 hours, he had us running a system. 2 hours. He had us doing, people of all different skill levels, all different knowledge levels, had us, we knew where to go, what to do, and when. And that's something that is a talent. That is not something that just, people either have it or you don't. That is a developed talent that Rodolfo has. That's what he brings. Damian Silvero was the video operations guy. I sat there, I quizzed him on how he selected his edits, how he presented them. He is somebody who also knew 100% what he was doing. He was with Tata Martino at Barcelona. So it's talent that's leaving the facility. And when people say, oh, it's just Tata leaving, that sucks. What you don't realize is there's a lot of brain trust that leaves with him. And that shouldn't be discounted. I'm not saying Frank de Boer doesn't have that coming in right behind, but I'm just saying acknowledge these gentlemen and the skill set that they brought to this team, which helped put the team in a position to win a championship.
Yeah, I mean, it's typical these days that a manager is going to take a staff from place to place. It's just kind of the way things work at this point. So once you knew that Tata Martino was not coming back, you could assume that the majority of his staff was not coming back as well. That, doesn't discount, I think, the point here in that, as great as Tata Martino was for Atlanta United, you also have to give a lot of credit to his whole staff that was involved in so many different things with the club. And now Frank de Boer will be bringing in his staff. Orlando Trustful is linked to Atlanta United since he's at the Combine with Frank de Boer in Atlanta United gear. So you would expect that he will follow him and be the assistant as he has been at Frank's last two stops. And we'll see how the rest of the staff shakes out. But honestly, I feel better about that De Boer is bringing in his own people than a situation like you're seeing with the LA Galaxy, where Guillermo Barros Schelotto is coming in to take over as the head man. But Dominic Kinnear, who turned down an offer to be the manager because it was only for 1 year, is going to be one of Guillermo's assistants. That feels odd. And that could be a little awkward depending on how things go.
That's a relationship that is going to be very interesting to watch unfold when you're talking about Schelotto and how that whole coaching staff and the player situation out there. That's going to be something to keep an eye on for sure. I'm in the crew where he was my initial pick, where I said, okay, he's the guy. And then the more information came out about Frank de Boer and the lineage and really the parallel lineage between Frank de Boer and Louis van Gaal. And then when you talk about Tata Martino and Marcelo Bielsa, how Bielsa really loved Louis van Gaal's Ajax teams and how he, the ball circulation and things like that, he brought a lot of those principles with him and passed that down. I started to feel so much better about the Frank de Boer signing than GBS. I think he's going to do okay in Los Angeles. I mean, they're obviously going to surround him with talent once they figure out what to do with the politely to say goon squad that they have now. But there's going to be some bumps in the road for him. So I don't think it's going to be championship right out of the gate, but I think you will see an improved LA Galaxy side. One thing I want to jump into here, and is obviously new year, everyone's still screwing up the dates when you write out a check, or for those old people who still write checks, or whenever you put your name and date on anything. we still have time to get into some things that are very New Year specific. What do we want to talk about when it comes to issuing red cards for 2018? What are things that happened in 2018? And I'm not going to restrict it to the world of international soccer. What are things in 2018 that you're saying, I'm giving you a red card, you are not allowed to play in 2019? Jason, do you have anything? I'm putting you on the spot. What's coming to mind immediately? What's your first red card that you're handing out?
The two things that come to mind are so on opposite ends of the spectrum, but these were my gut feelings on this topic. One is Neymar diving. Just
yes.
So over it. He's too good of a player for that to be his legacy and that to be what you think of when you think of him. Other than dreadlocks, and that's a whole different thing. But the diving of Neymar just has to be something that is left in the past. You have to get past it at some point. On a completely different end of the spectrum, the behavior and racist behavior that seems to be coming to the fore again in the world of soccer. It hasn't really gone away. Honestly, I think with the World Cup being in Russia in 2018, I think we were lucky not to have some of the incidents that we've seen in Russia over the years in soccer stadiums. We didn't really have that. That wasn't what this World Cup was known for, and that was a good thing. But then we had these things flare up late in the year, and it's not going to go away overnight. It takes vigilance for these types of things to be eradicated from the game, and I'll include, not racist behavior, but I'll include the chant that we've heard so often with the Mexican national team. That type of just disrespectful behavior from the stands towards players, I really would love to see that left in the past. It's going to take more than a year to do it. It's going to take people being vigilant and staying on top of it. But yeah, you have to start somewhere, and it has to be just cut out of our game.
I completely co-signed both of those. I know we've talked previously about Neymar's diving. I want to take the Pavarotti classic Nessun Dorma and play that with a highlight reel of Neymar diving like he's been shot. And if you watch any of the CW where they have like the super soapy teen bopper shows where like the one of the main characters dies and it's like a 5-minute sequence where it's like super slow motion, almost like Matrix style, and the character's like and they fall to the ground and spend another 3 minutes dying. That's Neymar like incarnate right there. If you could just take that and sub him into any of those scenes, it would work perfectly. And I also want to issue a red card to Neymar's friends for not telling him to hold off on the extensions, on the dreadlock extensions. There are plenty of people who look great with dreadlock extensions. Neymar is not one of them. Neymar, cut it out. Take those things off your head because you just it just doesn't look right at all. And you did it like overnight. It wasn't even like a slow grow where you like kind of grew it out and then accentuated. No, sir. We went full on Marley overnight. That does not fly. Red card for your friends for letting you out the door.
Wait a minute. I have a question. You said that there are plenty of people who look great with dreadlock extensions. Is that true?
I would say yes.
Plenty of people with dreadlock extensions, not like real dreadlocks, because real dreads are cool.
No, because when I was coming up through my production career, right?
Okay.
One of my stops was V103, and I knew several people who had dreadlock extensions that worked for the radio station, and they look great.
All right,
and
fair enough.
I think in that context it works, but there are certain people who don't pull it off.
No.
I'm just saying there's certain people who look good with a certain type of wig. There's certain people who look good with a certain type of extension. And Neymar, and I'm not saying it has anything to do with Neymar's skin color. I'm saying because he went like bleach blonde dreadlock extensions overnight. It looked like somebody like butchered marsupial and staple gunned it to his head. It was just a bad job. It's horrible. That's why he needs to get rid of it. I mean, grow whatever hair you want, my guy, but just, don't go outside looking like you have roadkill. Okay, Joe Dirt. Has everyone seen Joe Dirt at the end where he gets the dreadlock things done? That's bad dreadlock extensions right there. That's what I'm talking about. Red card for Neymar, red card for his friends. Also, I am giving the red card to violence before games. We saw this. If you have not watched the Copa 90 Copa Libertadores special, I don't know what you're doing, but you need to stop, pause at the podcast. I'm giving you permission, walk away, watch the show, come back and finish the show with us. That episode of Copa 90, I don't know if it needs a Webby Award, Golden Globe. It is absolutely top flight reporting that they were in the heart of it from when the first brick was thrown and the aftermath when they interview fans on both sides, and they interviewed the taxi cab driver who I want to say he was a Boca fan, but he was crying because they talk about, how much passion there is and how fans go to therapy just to deal with the passion that they have for their team. But then something like the Copa Libertadores final happens where you have buses getting hit with bricks and tear gas and everything else. That has to stop. And in Napoli versus Inter, they had a fan who died before the game. It's not worth it. You're going to play each other again next year, right? Like, what's the blood count have to be for everyone to finally be like, okay, we can just hate each other and say stupid things to each other on Twitter and call it that? Why do we have to continue with this idiocy? There's no point for violence before games. And 100%, Jason, I'm backing you up on this. The racism in the game has to stop. And Serie A, I have gone and I've promoted that league. I promoted teams. I try to get people to go and watch that. And for what happened at Inter and Napoli, where Koulibaly was just had racial insult after racial insult launched at him, to the point where Napoli talked about walking off the field. And to their credit, after the game, even said, "Hey, if it happens again, we're walking off. You can, forfeit the game. We don't care. We're walking off the field in support of our guy." There's no excuse for that anymore. I mean, it's just done. I know it's resurgent now. It went away, but it has to be nipped in the bud, and that starts with the fans, not the government, not the teams. It starts with the fans. We have to change the way we're doing business. Red card to ignorant racism and violence before games. So scratch it on that. Okay, Jason, do you have anything else you're issuing the red card to?
Those are the ones that were the big ones for me. I mean, are there things that I want to see improve? Are there things I want to see change? Sure. But those are the things that, to me, just have to leave the game.
Is that a Mr. John Nelson who's joined us?
John Nelson with the buzzing phone and the scraping across the microphone. That is his forte, yes.
It's amazing what happens when you don't shave.
Yeah,
So, John, we're talking about things we're issuing the red card to in 2018 that we do not want to see in 2019. It doesn't have to be soccer. For example, I'm issuing a red card to all movie reboots. That if we had like an awesome movie in the 70s or 80s, we do not need to see a new version now with crappy actors. I'm issuing the red card to rebooted movies.
I would agree.
But where's the line? Like, I agree if it's a rebooted movie from like 20 years ago, that's a little ridiculous. If it's a rebooted movie from 40 years ago or 50 years ago or whatever, is that okay?
No.
Just no remakes, period?
No.
They're talking about redo. Okay, so Scarface, the Al Pacino classic.
No.
That was a remake of the original Scarface, which was like old black and white, old-timey movie. They're talking about trying to remake that.
No.
Negative, Ghost Rider.
Here's my thing on it. If it's a classic like that, what are you going to do with it? Like, how are you going to improve upon it? You're not, so just don't even try. If it's a movie that you can put a modern spin on or do in a different way, it's a different conversation. And this is
tried it Overboard, and it was a bad idea.
Well, this is a ways back, but I think some people loved it and some people hated it. The '90s version of Romeo and Juliet that was done in a completely different style and format and all that. Yes. That was it's a remake of a remake of a remake of a remake, but that was done in a different way. If you're going to do something like that, okay, I'll pay attention. Like, if you wanted to take Scarface and update it to modern time and be a movie like inspired by Scarface or something, all right, that could work. That could be interesting.
I was cool with A Star Is Born. I was cool with the new version because it was different.
If you're going to do it, you got to do it different. It's just like a cover song, you know? If you're going to do a cover song note for note, why? Why are you wasting your time if the other group, you know, is better and did it in a better way? If you're going to put a new spin on it and update it or do something different to it, okay. I'll give it a shot.
All right, John, what's your red card?
Oh, goodness gracious. See, you started talking about just fan violence, and for me, that would be the ultimate red card. That would be red card, ejection. Take your pick. I'm sick and tired of needless, unnecessary, immature fan violence toward other fans and teams and their vehicles, thinking that setting something on fire is cool, setting something, launching a projectile through a window that causes harm to an athlete. And I guess secondarily, and probably this comes from what happened last night, you're banned from social media if you want to wish death upon someone for something that they didn't do to benefit your fanaticism. So you're red carded from social media.
Yeah, they're talking
not allowed
about
to talk
kick in the Bears. In the Bears game.
Anybody who wishes death upon Cody Parkey, no, stop. You're banned from social media. You're banned from talking. Your red card is computers that don't work with keyboards that don't work. Any kind of voice recognition system doesn't work at all. You're banned from any kind of opinion. That's my red card.
You're getting a red flip phone. That's what you're getting.
Yes.
Like an old Casio flip phone. That's what you're getting.
Yes. Or a jitterbug.
Oh, good Lord. Good Lord. One final thing I'm giving the red card to and then moving on is going to be German teams raiding U.S. development academies without providing solidarity payments. There's been a lot of stuff going back and forth about this where, for example, Christian Pulisic's development academy team will not be getting a solidarity payment when it could dramatically affect the lives of dozens of local players, where you can provide scholarships for. We keep talking about pay to play and how horrible it is for the parents and kids who can't afford to be a part of it. But solidarity payments could allow these teams to issue more scholarships to allow these kids to come in. It could change their fortunes. And the Germans have found the loophole in the system, which is find young talent, get them overseas, no cost. There's no real cost of failure here other than housing a kid for a few months, and it doesn't work out, you ship them back home. But it has worked out for Josh Sargent, Zion Jones, Weston McKinney, Jonathan Klinsman, and Christian Pulisic. That list will grow if development academies aren't protecting these players and aren't getting solidarity payments from the teams. I don't know how it's going to get done. I'm not an expert in that field, but I'm just saying it needs to get done. So that's my final red card.
It's tricky. And I don't know if everybody saw the statement from the MLS Players Association about this. It's an interesting situation, and I'm sure that child labor laws in the United States do have an effect on this, and I'd like to know what effect, and I'd like to know exactly how they impact it. The Players Association and their statement that they gave originally to Alexi Lalas, and then they backed it up on social media as well. The MLS Players Association is opposed to both solidarity payments and training compensation, and those are two different things. And one thing they said that I do see their point, and I would say this to you, and what you said, Nick, is that clubs who would potentially get one of these payments could put it towards scholarships and could put it towards, whatever they wanted to. But most likely, as what generally happens with a lot of these clubs who are pay to play, the money's going to go into the directors, the money's going to go into the coaches, the money's going to go into the people running the club, and that's how it's going to go down. If it was set up by the federation that these payments were only to be used for scholarships or community outreach or what have you, then I think we're having a different conversation, and I think the Players Association would have to have a different conversation about it at that point. It wouldn't get rid of pay-to-play. It wouldn't. There's not enough out there, and I think we get really hung up on this because we hear like a Christian Pulisic deal, like, oh yeah, it'd be a massive game changer, but most of these deals are not going to be something like that. And the other side too, and I think it is a fair point that the Players Association makes. Should a club get training compensation and solidarity payments if that player paid to participate at the club? It's kind of like double dipping. Now, if it's a player who didn't pay, or if it's a club that is not a pay-to-play club, or however you want to look at it, different ways, different clubs have different formats, then it's a little bit different conversation. It's a very complicated situation, and right now, I think too many people are just yelling into the ether about it and not actually looking at all of the complicated elements about youth soccer in the United States compared to youth soccer and clubs and player development in the rest of the world. It is a different conversation. I really do think child labor laws affect it, as well as parents paying for players to play at clubs. If everybody can get on the same page and find a way for this to work and benefit the game, and benefit, especially, as you said, like scholarships and those types of kids who don't have access to play. All about it. All for it. But they've got to figure it out to where it makes sense across the board. And hopefully we're going to start to get some of that, because I believe the original case, the Crossfire one involving DeAndre Yedlin, is in front of CAS or FIFA right now, and I think the Clint Dempsey one is right behind it, and there's others that are stacking up. So you're going to have to see some kind of a resolution here shortly. And whatever it is, I hope people just keep their heads. And if I want to give a red card, it's to people who are trying to make hot takes about this without actually like studying it. It's going to be complicated. It's going to be tricky. It's going to be difficult. And hopefully whatever the resolution is from FIFA and or the Court for Arbitration of Sport, then they can work with the United States Soccer Federation, the youth clubs, U.S. Youth. I mean, you've got, on the youth side, you've got the Federation, you've got the U.S. Youth Soccer Association, you've got AYSO, you've got clubs who are unaffiliated, you've got U.S. Club Soccer, you've got so many different alphabet soups of people you got to deal with. This is not going to be resolved overnight. So hopefully everybody can work for the betterment of the game to do this. And I'd love it, Nick, if it did result in more scholarships for kids who wouldn't have access. Completely would do that. And I think that would take away some of the issues that the Players Association brought up about, well, this would just, go to a director of coaching's pocket. If you figure out a way to make sure that doesn't happen and it's going to benefit the game, let's do it.
John, I think Jason just gave me the red card.
No, didn't give you the red card.
Might have been a yellow.
No. It's just it's a complicated thing, and it's a tricky one. And I think a lot of people are twisting it into things that are not necessarily there. And Pulisic's club was actually interesting. They came out and said they were not going to seek it. They were not going to ask for it. They were not going to file a claim or a lawsuit on it, which was very interesting that they came out so quickly to say that, because theirs would by far be the biggest financial windfall of any of the potential deals that have been out there for American players.
Well, I'm sure there's a wink, wink, nudge, nudge deal between the club and Dortmund. Like, hey, look, let us use some of your imagery and things like that whenever we put pamphlets out saying, hey, we sold the 64 million euro kid.
Could be. And there could have been something in place already. That could have been part of the initial deal with him going over. You got to remember, too, his father played professionally, and his father's been around the block in this type of stuff, too. So you're going to have that influence as well. The clubs are going to benefit. I mean, whether they get a solidarity payment, a training compensation payment or not, if you have any sense of marketing, you're going to be able to benefit from these situations, and you should. And you should use it to your advantage, because that's where the game's going to me. That's the biggest difference here from where we've been, is it's not just about sending players on to college on scholarships for American youth clubs now. It's about making professionals and people who are going to be valued at this type of dollar figure.
And one thing is, and this is something that I'm going to give you guys a plug for your show as well, for Soccer Down Here, and saying that if you really want to save American soccer, quote unquote, save American soccer, support your USL clubs, support your MPSL clubs, because they're the ones who are going to be finding this talent at a more local level when there's not an MLS side around. So when these clubs work their way through development academies and they have that choice of either going to college or signing a pro contract somewhere, follow those clubs, buy tickets for those clubs, and help put butts in seats so that way they can continue to scout local talent to help work them up the tree.
Yeah, those are the game changers. When kids in Statesboro and Greenville and Chattanooga can look up to professional players and say, I want to play for that club, and then also turn on the TV and this season turn on ESPN or Fox and see Atlanta United all the freaking time. And say, I want to play for that club, and I want to wear that jersey, and I want to play in that stadium. That's what changes the game in the long run. That's the big game changer. So when you see kids in Birmingham with a Chandler Hoffman jersey, and then also watching Atlanta United and a Joseph Martinez jersey, that's pretty cool. And that's where kids have something that we didn't have growing up. We didn't have those heroes locally that we could go watch and get an autograph from.
Well, and I mean, one of the guys that we've kind of paid attention to is a guy like Nico Rittmeyer, who goes from Statesboro and has a time with Tormenta, and now he's at the next step with the Charleston Battery. So he's one of those guys in that footprint that is making those kinds of strides. I know it's a very micro example, but for me, those are the kind. Yeah, but that to me is the first name that popped into my head was Nico Rittmeyer.
Yeah, and there's a ton of those. I mean, Grega Hartley in Chattanooga, you can go through all of them because it's localized. It's not a micro example as being small, because to a kid in Statesboro or Savannah, Nico Rittmeyer is a huge deal, because it's like, I can be him. He played down the street from where I play now. That's where he started playing. He lived down there. That's what has a bigger effect than anything. So over time, when you take that and you combine it with more and more players becoming professional and more professional opportunities, and you see more clubs in the USL pyramid and more high-level player development opportunities at younger ages, you're going to see more Christian Pulisics and Chris Richards and Zion Jones and all of these guys. You're going to see more of these guys because you have Statesboro and Greenville and Chattanooga represented. And that's going to be the big time, long-term game changer for American soccer, is more professional soccer, more just high-level soccer in a local sense in more communities around the country, because that's what kids need more than anything to want to become a professional soccer player. They need local heroes.
Yep. Completely co-sign that. And while we are on the Soccer Down Here side of the fence, what I would like to do is talk a little bit about what DC United is doing when it comes to how you will be able to take in their games. So I'm reading this from Washington Post, where Stephen Goff wrote this, where DC United, they're changing the way they do things. They will no longer broadcast games on WJLA. Where they were been shown for 3 years, and they won't be shown on NBC Sports Washington. And they're changing it. They're going now to a pay-to-play system with Flow Sports. They signed a 4-year agreement that will carry 21 of 34 regular season matches. The rest will appear on the national platforms, Fox Sports, ESPN, Unimas. And this is going to be something completely different because it's not just game broadcast. DC United is now making an investment in their digital team, which I think we can all agree has been lackluster up to this point. And they are also allowing Flow Sports cameras access to the team, the facility, and so forth to provide year-round content. So for all of those who, let's just talk about very quickly. One, is this a good or bad thing in your opinion, guys? And also, when we get through with that, I want to go into a little bit about my background when it comes to sports content distribution and how this could be a big deal should we have naysayers out there.
It's different, and I think you can see where TV and rights and broadcasts are going in different directions right now. We're kind of at that weird time in the middle of it where you have, traditional over-the-air broadcasts, and some teams have that. You have cable broadcasts, and some teams have that. You have some teams that have a local broadcast and also have a streaming partner. Orlando was one of those. You have some teams that decided to go with no local TV and go with a streaming partner, as LAFC did, as Chicago Fire did, and now DC United's doing. It's a really interesting time to see when the dust is going to settle and how it's going to settle. By all accounts, this is the first time DC United has made money on a TV deal. And you have to factor that into your thoughts on this. It is an opportunity for them to be front and center with Flow Sports, who is launching flowfc.com, and some articles popped up there today. Flowfc.com is Flow Sports' 25th sports vertical. This is not a small fly-by-night company that's experimenting with things. They're putting some pretty high level investment. All the games are going to be aired in HD on flowfc.com. It's an interesting move. It's different, and it's going to affect some fans in a very negative way. But in a few years, I could see this type of thing becoming the norm. I could see it being far more common than it is right now. And it seems like MLS is kind of at the forefront for this in the United States.
And for me, looking at the home base of Flow, it's Austin, Texas. And I think that this partnership with DC United is probably something of a tire kicking when it comes to MLS and the future franchise that's going to be in Austin, Texas. And I'm fairly confident that Flow will want to have that local product as a part of all of their verticals. And Flow does everything from MMA to Big Ten secondary sports and non-revenue sports. I want to see more information about how much it's going to cost, what you get. I know that I think it's $150 a year for the full Flow Sports service, where you get all of the verticals that are there. But I want to know how much they're going to charge. And I want to know what I'm getting for that, because, Jason, to your point, with YouTube TV, if you're locally or in the LAFC footprint, that's part of your thing. Otherwise, you have to deal with ESPN Plus and all that other stuff. But I want to see more information. I'm intrigued. But for me, I right now have still more questions than I do answers. But I see where DC United's going. And I also looked at the comments under the Stephen Goff article on its social media. And so far, it is overwhelmingly negative, but that's somewhat to be expected.
But also keep in mind that for you, John, for anybody in Metro Atlanta, in the South who's listening to us, we don't know what the radius is around DC that would make this a local broadcast and have it blacked out on ESPN Plus. But to watch DC United matches that are not on national TV, Here, you don't have to have Flow Sports. It won't help you. You have ESPN Plus, and that's
Right.
what'll get you that. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you're outside of DC's footprint. This is for people who are in the DC United viewing area. And that's been a really interesting question for DC fans in general, because it seemed like it shifted from the NBC Sports Washington days, and if you go further back to the old Sports Channel days, to the Sinclair days, as to what that area was. Like, I think Richmond, Virginia, it was sometimes included in a local broadcast zone, and sometimes it wasn't. So that's probably the next big question as to what is that radius that you got to watch on Flow Sports. Here in Atlanta, it's not going to affect it. Out-of-market games will be on ESPN+, but for local folks in the D.C. area, they're going to have to make some decisions. And right now, I think Flow Sports is like $30 across the board a month. It's pretty steep, but the reporting has been that there would be very steep discounts for DC United fans. And how long does that last? What does that entail? What is it exactly? Those are the big questions.
One thing I would like to point to is how many fans out there who are new to European soccer now know the name Sunderland because of Sunderland Till I Die on Netflix. It's something where you don't have to be a soccer fan to watch that and get completely engrossed in the slow meltdown of that team. And it is absolutely gripping video to watch. And I think that if you do something where you allow cameras access, like they have with First Team Juventus, like they have with Sunderland Till I Die, if United allows them to tape even when it's not pretty, and they put that out to the masses, I think you are going to be opening a door which could be fantastic, not only for MLS, but for soccer in general, because you will be bringing in a larger audience. You're bringing that drama aspect to it. When it comes to distribution of sports media, MLS, and I love the product. I'm a believer in the product. They've done a very poor job, in my mind, of getting their branding out. The teams are very hit or miss on social media content, on how the teams are covered. They really don't provide any profiles on the players and their backgrounds. And I think this is a fantastic opportunity if they do it well, which is the key. If they allow the access to really showcase DC United as a brand, one, MLS as a brand, two, and three, really give a vision of what MLS media could be if they let it happen. And we've all talked offline about the shortcomings of what we think, MLS media, what they should do, what some teams do and what some teams don't. Atlanta has a very robust digital media team. They do a fantastic job. But there are teams out there that don't. And I think that if you had more opportunities like this for teams like a Minnesota, like a Chicago, where you could get to know the players and say, hey, this guy comes from this really crazy background and he's a really good guy. That's somebody who I want to support. That's a jersey I'll go buy. That's something I'm watching. And I get the immediate pushback on this because it's yet another service you have to look at. And I do want to see that final cost. But as someone who's done content production, when we worked with NCAA.com, all the money was going toward highlights. And the more data came in, the more we realized that the highlights weren't where the audience was going. We started doing stuff like giving handy cams to Appalachian State and getting random videos from them and putting it together in a package. And that got monster numbers. So what we initially thought would be the main revenue driver, the main metrics driver, really fell apart when we started doing the deep dive. And we started looking at other things like potential like stadium tours and things like that, and the little bits and nuggets of viral media that we could cook up, like the Army-Navy game, trying to cover when the cadets, the Corps of Cadets and the midshipmen walked in. That all got monster numbers. It was the stuff that we didn't initially think would be hot. But when I went into media distribution, it was very much the same thing. When you got a profile, something that gave you that extra depth of information that resonated with the audience, it doesn't sound good up front. But when you start digging and keep in mind, they haven't produced content piece one yet. But when it starts coming out, I think that's where you're going to start seeing that value. But I would tell them, you have to go whole hog on this. You cannot go half-assed. You better go the whole damn donkey if you're going in, because I promise you, if you cheap out on this, if you don't provide that content, it will fall apart. Your business model will fall apart, and you will have to start at square one, which is extraordinarily expensive. But I do think MLS should look at this and say, okay, how can we, if this is successful, how can we mirror this around the country from a content generation perspective, not just broadcasting games? Because I think Atlanta has a great setup here with Fox Sports South. I'm sure other teams do with their local networks as well. I'm just saying that from a content perspective, dinner with the Parkhurst family, I don't know, riding in the car with Joseph Martinez when he's going out to the club one night, something, anything to get these names out there to the audience where they can say, wow, Martinez is into cars and music and whatever. That's somebody who I'm going to get behind, even though I don't live in Atlanta. Or if you can put a camera with Tito Villalba and he says, hey, we're going to go to San Lorenzo today. I want to show you where I grew up. I'm watching that all day. Justin Miram, when he talks about playing for the Iraqi national team, that's stuff I want to see. And if MLS can showcase these people where I don't have to go do Google search after Google search on it, where it's just presented first click, that's a revenue driver, and not just from a click perspective, but also from a branding perspective.
And for me, it's all good. No, for me, it's all about quality of the product. And I want to see good stories. I want to see good production. And I know that some folks are a little apprehensive about pulling back the curtain and showing things warts and all. And like I said, I want to see what the rundown is. I want to see what the production ideas are for Flow and for DC. And like I said, I'm looking forward to that aspect of the creative. But I think these days, and I think that this might have changed in the last 5 years or so, I think that fans want quality as opposed to quantity. I think that they want those longer form pieces. They want to be educated. They want to have something put in front of them that has some meat to it, that can tell a good story, regardless of what that story is. Mm-hmm. And for me, like I said, I'm looking at the rundown. I'm looking at the production elements. I want to see what Flo is thinking about here when it comes to DC, because if done well, it could be something that could set a new bar. But if it's not done well, everybody's going to sit there and go, nah, not interested, and it could set things further back.
I don't think it sets things further back, but I think it sets Flow further back. I think Flow Sports is in a position where in the next rights deal for Major League Soccer, I could very easily see a national digital stream package, that is exclusive. I think it'd have to be. Otherwise, why would you pay big money for it right now if you're terms of the MLS product? So whether that's Flow getting a national game of the week, whether that's an Amazon getting a national game of the week, Netflix is always one that gets talked about but hasn't ever jumped into that side of it just yet. Hulu as well. I think these types of deals are the precursor to that and creating another nationally broadcast package through a streaming partner. And if Flow does a good job here, I think they're setting themselves up well, because they have to compete against YouTube TV and they have to compete against an ESPN Plus, because both of them are already a year in and both of them have a lot of success. So can Flow Sports position themselves to be that? It seems like that's the type of thing they're looking to do. They're trying to go big. So that would be something that would make a lot of sense beyond just picking up different teams' deals in their local markets, doing something to bring people to the Flow FC platform as a whole from a national basis.
And one thing is that if you have ESPN Plus, and I'm not telling, if you're not huge into Serie A, that's fine. But just go watch their Serie A recap or their in-depth videos where they go to a specific city and follow a team and interview players. It's fantastic content. And watch that and just think about doing that with MLS teams. and what you could have with that. And I think, to me, that's the important thing that could be had here. Both of you guys make excellent points. I just think it's something that they do have to do exceptionally well out of the gate if they want to, Jason, to your point, develop that relationship with MLS where they start to be looked at as a potential competitor when that contract with ESPN Plus comes up. Good luck. ESPN Plus is awesome. You should all subscribe to ESPN Plus immediately.
But, no, I don't even think it's that. I don't even think I wouldn't even be looking at that. If I'm Flow Sports, I would be looking at, hey, Major League Soccer, we want you to carve out another national broadcast each week, and we want it to be exclusive on our platform, and we're going to pay you for it. And that's going to bring people subscribing to Flow FC, Flow Sports, however they structure it. I think that's something that has not happened just yet in the major leagues in the United States. And it seems like Major League Soccer would be a great fit for a national streamed broadcast partner. In this next TV window that's going to pop up, you're going to start negotiating in 2021, and it's going to take effect, I believe, after the 2022 season. You're going to have a new TV deal come up. And that would seem to be, at that time, you're talking 3 more years, streaming is going to be far more common then than it is now. So a national streaming package, like a game of the week on Flow Sports or on YouTube TV, and you've got to subscribe to that area to get that game, I think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be part of the next TV deal.
Well, MLS, if you're out there and you are scratching your heads trying to find some fantastic content people to come and help set up your national program, I happen to know some people here at the SDH Universe who can really help you guys out. So holla at your boys. Anyways, let's get into the transfer world really quick as we round out the show. We didn't run any commercials today, guys. Sorry about that. Good Lord.
Nah, it's all good. We're starting the year. We appreciate our friend Steve Apolinski and Apolinski and Associates and the Jason Wright Agency. They have been great to us, and definitely
and
go
Smokey
check
Bear.
them out. Well, always Smokey Bear. I mean, we know that.
Always. And Goodwill. You know, shop at Goodwill, help other people out.
Yes.
So, there we go. All right. And adopt animals, because adopting animals, that's the way to go. Help them find good homes. There we go. We've covered our sponsors. All right. So let's start off with the one that's near and dear to everyone in Atlanta, Miguel Almirón. I had to put out a tweet today because I'm tired of reading people attempting to use some dark alchemy to get 4 DPs on the field at the same time for Atlanta United. And it's not going to happen. Just it's unless they come out and they change the rules on us, and Professor Darren Eagles, Darren Elephant, whoever else is in the room happens to know something we don't know, it's not happening. So Miguel Almirón, the most likely piece to be moved if we start putting probability on things. Newcastle was originally the primary team. Of course, financing is a tremendous issue for them, as Mr. Nelson can attest to. But Real Betis coming in, according to the dirt sheet, saying that they are interested in Miguel Almirón. Guys, I'm a firm believer that the fastest way to the Premier League for Miguel Almirón would be through La Liga. Your thoughts on a potential transfer? And again, it's silly season. Let's get stupid. Don't get caught in, that's never going to happen. Just enjoy it and embrace debates. The one time I'm ever going to say that on this show.
Oh.
The one time ever.
Oh.
I know. I'm sorry. That's profanity. That's podcast profanity to say that. Sorry.
Skip, why you want to talk about that kind of stuff on this show, Skip? Come on now.
I just believe that the Dallas Cowboys are the greatest team in human history. I went to Vanderbilt. There you go. There you go. That's your Skip Bayless, Shannon Sharp of the day. All right. So Real Betis, they're currently sitting in 6th in La Liga. They desperately need to get into that top 3 guys. Will a move for Miguel Almirón make sense for Real Betis or Newcastle? And if you're Miguel and his agent, where are you going?
What do you think, John?
Wow. See, I mean, I'm leaning Betis just because of my perpetual anti-Mike Ashley stance. and him sitting on his hands and not giving Rafa Benitez what he needs to make sure that they stay up. And I like the idea of him going there, and I like the idea of him as a part of their push to get into those positions. But, it's the whole thought pattern of, okay, do we want to make the move now to make the push now, or do you wait a couple of weeks, see what your position is, and then either make the move or sit on your hands and fold at the poker table? I would love a move to Betis. I know that everybody wants to see the Premier League. If it's going to be anywhere for me, it would probably be something like a West Ham over a Newcastle, just because of the history lesson. But I could completely dig a move to Betis and have him be a part of something there.
It's all about the money. And if you're Miguel Almiron's agent, your job is to make him as much money as possible. And there's more money in the Premier League than in La Liga, flat out. There is. The chances of him getting a fat new contract are far bigger in the Premier League, just because the TV money's there. The money across the board is there. Mid-table teams in the Premier League have more money than some top teams around Europe. That's how it is. So I totally get the fixation on the agent's part about England and wanting to go there. But Real Betis, with where they are and what is potentially on the table for them in terms of the Champions League, that's a really appealing situation. Now, the question is, can they get to the price tag? And you wouldn't have ordinarily thought that, but with recent deals and money that's come into the club, combined with being able to potentially reach out and grab a Champions League spot, there might not be a better time for them to spend money. Now, what are they going to offer in terms of an improved contract? And that would be the question. And that would be the question for the agent and for the player, because you do have to consider that. Okay, you go to Betis and you don't get into a Champions League spot. All right, then what? Is that still where you want to be? Can you fight for a Champions League spot next year? I don't know. There's a risk in any kind of move like this, and there will be a risk no matter where Miguel Almiron goes. But right now, it's so early in the window, and there's so many different moving parts to it. It is a little bit of a wait and see. And I think the more clubs that are interested and express interest and are talking about it, the better for Atlanta United. I think ultimately the better for Miguel Almiron, because it's going to drive numbers up, and that's where you want it to be. But I don't know where the best spot is right now, because I don't know what the numbers are looking like. Betis would seem to be a club with the greatest motivation to push a deal through quickly, but there's also risk about going to Real Betis. So I don't know. It's going to be a fascinating saga to see, and then it's going to be a fascinating watch wherever he ends up.
And I misspoke earlier. It's top 4 for Spain, so they only have to move up a couple of spots to get there.
They're
so
5 points out and two spots back.
That's right. So the fruit is very low for you, as opposed to 15th place Newcastle. Should you in your own little transfer, choose your own adventure book. Some other stuff that's going on. Tim Weah is going to be leaving PSG. We got to do the rundown quick as we go into stoppage time. Tim Weah leaving PSG on a loan to Celtic. I think this is a great move for him. There's a lot of drama and bad habits at PSG, even though they're dominating Ligue 1. Learning from Neymar, yes, there's some cool tricks you can pick up, like how to dive and continue your roll for about 42 yards. Rabiot, that whole situation there, is watching that unfold has to be a nightmare for Tim Weah, as you said on the bench. But in my opinion, guys, quick yes or no, is this a good move for Tim Weah?
Dig it. Love what they did on social media to announce it. I thought that was very, very cool.
Very clever.
It's good for him to get playing time. We'll see if the style suits him and how they use him. I want to see if he's a number 9 or not, or if he's a winger. I'm not really sure yet.
Completely agree with that. And I'm his agent. I am staying so far away from Serie A. It's not funny. He was rumored to have a loan deal with Lazio. Thank God that fell through. So I'm also on board with this great move. Brahim Diaz leaving Man City, going to Real Madrid. I out there. I wouldn't go to Real Madrid right now. They're a train wreck, but
it's an interesting one, though. I mean, I was listening to TalkSport and some of the conversation around this. Like Manchester City's in a spot where you're producing talent. Your academy's done really well. Chelsea's been in a spot too, and you don't have anywhere for him to play. And he's not beating out Riyad Mahrez. I mean, you brought in Mahrez. You're not going to play this kid, so he has an opportunity to go and get paid. And yeah, it's a train wreck right now, but you would think that it's not going to be a train wreck for long because it's not going to be allowed to be a train wreck for long. So maybe that's a good spot to be because he's not playing for Manchester City anytime soon. Not if Phil Foden can't get games on a regular basis, and Foden's ahead of him.
Understood on that one. John, your thoughts?
Nope, dig it completely. I mean, the line right now, it's like he'd be serving number 7 when it comes to trying to get something at customer service. So, too many guys in front. Go where you can get playing time and hope to improve your stock.
This is something for Atlanta United fans to keep an eye on. These types of moves, because when you have an academy that is producing talent and you have a team that is ambitious and going to spend money on top talent, you're going to have situations like this where you produce a very good player, but there's not an easy spot for them to fit into. And that's going to happen. And then sometimes you're going to have a situation where you just produce a bunch of players in one position and not all of them can play and make a roster. So keep an eye on how Manchester City deals with these things.
And keep in mind, Atlanta United fans as well, that the academy is part of the economic engine, right? Just as Jason said, it's part of the economic engine. If we lose a player like an Andrew Carlton, God forbid it should happen, but if it happens, you will get compensated. It helps the club. It helps him. Everyone wins. All right, Lucas Paqueta leaving Flamengo, going to AC Milan. I'm an AC Milan fan. We all know this. It's a bad move for him because that team right now is also a train wreck, and there's no telling if Gattuso is even going to last the season. I'm against it. Guys, go.
Gattuso's still there. He's not going anywhere.
For now.
What he said.
Sometimes it may be good.
Sometimes it may be good.
Yeah,
My kids listen sometimes, so I have to be careful.
We need that as a drop.
It's a
yes, we do.
Family-friendly show, guys.
We can reverse the profanity and do it like they do on the radio rap edits.
Oh yeah, we might have to do that. It's a tricky one. I don't know enough about the opportunity he's gonna get here at Milan, and that's what it's down to for guys who are making the jump from this hemisphere to Europe is what opportunity you're going to get that's different than where you're at, and is it something that can last? Now, the second part of that at Milan, I don't know. But is it an opportunity to get into the shop window and get noticed and get more attention than you would where you're coming from? Maybe. Maybe it is. Maybe it's worth the risk.
Well, this is the kind of move they need to do because they need to start doing moves on a budget. Anything below $80 million, I'm okay with, and so this falls in that line. Mario Balotelli is out there. Rudy Garcia may be facing the axe at Marseille as a result. Mario Balotelli could be just released out into the wild. If you are Mario Balotelli, do you try to get a move to MLS, or do you try to fight your way to stay in Europe?
If you're Mario Balotelli, you go to MLS and you go light it up and stay out of trouble and then get a better deal back to Europe. Actually, let me rephrase. If I'm Mario Balotelli, that's what I'm doing. What the real Mario Balotelli might do is go take stupid, crazy money in China or Qatar or United Arab Emirates or somewhere like that and fade off into the sunset.
There we go.
Yeah, I'm down with that.
Well, outside of that, gentlemen, that is going to be the show for today. I don't want to keep anyone longer than we have to, but I want to say, first of all, thank you so much to everyone who listens and comments, especially when we post the hot drops. I love doing them. I will have more of them, but it only happens when I get feedback like the stuff that you guys have been saying. So I'm glad we all got through the holidays together. The families can be nuts. I understand. Travel can be nuts. We're going to leave Wayne Rooney alone because when you travel, especially at the holidays, man, you might find me on the news getting arrested for saying God knows what in the airport too, because it's that crazy. But love each other. Take care of each other. Thank you so much for listening. John, Jason, anything before we get out of here?
Straight cash, homie.
Yeah, it's
Mucha euros.
$25 fines. It's all good.
That is little euro, y'all.
Yes.
Adios. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week live at 6:30 Monday. Soccer over there.
Peace.